will be the 7th year that every game comes down basically to the wire. A lot of times it's for the championship, and that's a credit to not just Coach D'Antonio, but my gosh, they got good players. So the good thing is getting ready for that game, there's zero motivation. Our players have so much respect for that team that they're going to be ready.
Coach will bounce over to the right side of the room on the aisle, even with the camera.
Hey, Coach, Ari Wasserman with The Athletic. I know at the end of spring football that Joe and Dwayne were pretty neck and neck, or what it seemed to be neck and neck. Is there any more insight on how that conversation went with Joe and, you know, how you guys, or how he decided to move on and go to LSU?
Very tough conversation in a positive way. You know, Joe Burrow, the last 2 weeks of spring practice, did about everything he could to win that spot. And I mean, I really haven't talked much about this, but it was right there. Joe and his family and I had open conversation all the way throughout, including conversation after the season about how we're going to handle the spring. Ryan Day did a phenomenal job. Even Joe and his family were very gracious and thankful. You know, I think the graduate transfer rule is very fair. You know, I know that that's a lot of conversation about that. It's very fair because the ultimate objective academically is to graduate. He fulfilled that obligation, and he should have a right to do what he wants to do. Do I wish he was still with us? I do. I love Joe Burrow. I love his family and have great respect for him. Man, that's not going to stop. That relationship will continue for many years.
Coach, our next question will be all the way in the back under the light on the left side.
Coach J.P. Cadorn from Spectrum Sports. Last season was the first time the Big Ten missed the college football playoff. I'm sure you're not concerned with an outside perspective. However, how do you feel the league is set up despite missing what is the ultimate goal for a lot of programs?
We had a great conversation in the spring meetings at the Big Ten. You know, we got to make sure that, you know, well, scheduling is a big part of it. You know, the Big Ten Conference not making it to the playoff, you know, I don't blame others. I blame ourselves. You know, I can't, it's not my job to worry about anything else in this country other than Ohio State. And we lost 2 games. We have a very tough schedule. Our schedule last year was very hard. So I think the Big Ten Conference has moved from, I can only give you the historical perspective from 2012 to 2018. It's not even close. The value, the competitive level at the Big Ten Conference right now is as strong as I've ever been in any conference. Speaking particularly about the Big Ten East, once again, I can just give you my historical perspective of the different conferences I've worked in. It's the most competitive division that I've ever been a part of. So how that relates to the college football playoff, that's too abstract. There's committees involved and other things involved. It's just, that's an issue the Big Ten's going to have to face. But the SEC faces as well. All conferences face good teams within their conference. You lose 2 or 3 games or a couple games in that conference, it's tough to make the playoff.
Time for 2 more, and we'll start right here.
Coach Ryan Schuling, Great Lakes Divide. The new rule regarding red shirts and the ability to have 4 games now leeway to make decisions on players. As you go into your process of evaluating and depth charts and assigning playing time, that sort of thing, what changes for you, if anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had conversation amongst our staff. There's not a template to say how we're going to handle this. I know every year when it starts getting down to that November run, you're dealing with injuries, you're dealing with other issues, fatigue, et cetera. You'd like to have some bodies available. What happens remains to be seen. You know, you'd hate to save a guy for those last 4 games and then not put him in the game. So it's still to be determined. I think the rule's good. I think it's good for the student athlete, which is what matters. And I'm excited to see how we can utilize it. But I can't tell you exactly how we're going to do it right now.
Take our final question here on the right of the room.
Coach, Bill Bender, Sporting News. You've been on both sides of the coin with the Big Ten champion in the playoffs. So how much of a concern is it to you long term that this conference with all this depth hasn't had its champion make the college football playoff the last 2 seasons?
It's very concerning. Once again, for someone to speak on someone who hasn't spent a lot of time studying why and how, I'm too busy with other things. You know, I imagine Jim Delaney and the higher-ups are having conversations of that should not happen from one of the premier conferences in America. But once again, for me to give my input, I don't know enough about what exactly the committee, you know, originally I was told, you know, about different levels, what's important to make the playoff, and I don't know if we live by that, you know, but once again, that's just my opinion. I have not studied it, and I'm not going to study it. It's none of my business. My job is to go get ready for Oregon State. But I think there needs to be conversation and further conversation about that.
Thanks very much, Coach.
Thank you, guys.
We'll have a 1-minute